The canonical story of Luke Skywalker is one of the saga's most foundational narratives. A defeated warrior, reeling from his first confrontation with Darth Vader, seeking the tutelage of the last Jedi Master of the Old Republic. The training on Dagobah represents a pivotal moment, a lesson in patience, discipline, and adherence to the light side of the Force. But what if the Force itself, in its inscrutable wisdom, provided a different mentor? What if the entity awaiting Luke in the swamps of Dagobah is not the exiled Grand Master, but a consciousness from the annals of history who perceived the Force in a way few have ever dared? A warrior who had been both savior and conqueror, Jedi and Sith. Today, we will analyze the critical junctures and cascading consequences of a hypothetical scenario. What if Revan trained Luke Skywalker? Our point of divergence begins in the humid swamps of Dagobah. Guided by the spectral voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker seeks out a great Jedi warrior. The Force signature he feels, however, is not the serene tranquility of Master Yoda. It is something ancient, turbulent, and immensely powerful, a nexus of light and dark energies, churning in a millennia-old vortex. Instead of a modest mud hut, Luke discovers a crumbling stone temple, overgrown with flora and humming with an energy that serves as a stark premonition. Drawn inside, he finds not a living master, but a holocron, dormant for ages. As he reaches out, it flares to life, and a figure of shimmering blue energy coalesces before him, clad in the iconic mask of a Mandalorian crusader and the robes of a Jedi Knight. He introduces himself simply as Revan. Here, the Force makes a pivotal decision. To defeat an empire forged in the dark side, Luke would require a mentor who had not only faced the darkness, but had commanded it, and returned with his spirit intact. Revan's tutelage represented a fundamental philosophical shift from the orthodox teachings Luke might have expected. Where Yoda would have preached serenity and the suppression of negative emotion, Revan advocated for control. He posited that passion was not an inherent conduit to the dark side, but a wellspring of power that, if understood and mastered, could provide a decisive advantage without corrupting the soul. He taught Luke to acknowledge his fear, his anger, and his attachments, not as liabilities to be severed, but as components of his spirit to be harnessed. The curriculum was brutally pragmatic, forged in the crucible of Revan's own military campaigns during the Mandalorian Wars. This was not the slow, meditative instruction of a monk. It was an accelerated course in wartime doctrine. Luke learned techniques the Jedi Order had long since deemed heretical or forgotten, most notably Force concealment, the ability to mask his presence from other Force sensitives. He was taught to absorb and redirect energy, a vital defense against a Sith Lord's Force lightning. He even learned the principles of Force healing, mending his own body to train with near uninterrupted intensity. Revan, a master of all forms of lightsaber combat, instructed Luke not merely in the defensive postures of a peacekeeper, but in the overwhelming, aggressive assaults of a warrior. He was being forged into a weapon, but a weapon guided by a balanced will. Revan's own history, his fall to the dark side, and his eventual redemption served as the core tenet of his instruction. The true path to victory was not to deny the dark side's existence, but to understand its temptations so thoroughly that they were rendered impotent. This was not the training of a Jedi Knight. It was the forging of a prodigy by a legend. The Luke Skywalker that emerged from Dagobah was therefore a fundamentally changed individual. He possessed greater confidence, a more aggressive posture, and a command of the Force far beyond his canonical counterpart. When he received the vision of his friends in peril on Cloud City, Revan's guidance was starkly pragmatic. He encouraged Luke to go, but with a critical warning. Use your connection to them as your strength, but do not engage Vader in a decisive duel. You are not ready. This is a rescue, not a confrontation. The events on Bespin unfold differently. While Luke is still outmatched, his blade work displays a newfound proficiency that unsettles Vader. He is not merely defending, he is analyzing, adapting, and surviving. When Vader reveals the truth, the blow is still staggering, but it is not a complete psychological collapse. Revan's training had provided a framework for emotional resilience. Luke recognized the revelation for the tactical trap that it was. He still loses his hand, but he escapes not as a broken victim, but as a student who has just absorbed a critical, if brutal, lesson. His resolve is hardened. This new Luke becomes the Alliance's most effective strategic asset. Using the principles of Force concealment, he could infiltrate Imperial installations undetected. In battle, he was a whirlwind of controlled aggression, turning the tide of skirmishes that would have otherwise been lost. He became more than a symbol. He became a singular operative, capable of accomplishing missions previously deemed impossible. The final confrontation aboard the second Death Star serves as the ultimate test of Revan's teachings. Brought before Emperor Palpatine, Luke stands not with the uncertainty of a Jedi Knight, but with the cold confidence of a warrior who understands his enemy's methodology. Palpatine's taunts about fear and anger fall on deaf ears. This Luke had already explored the nature of the dark side under a master who had once worn the mantle of Dark Lord. The Emperor's temptations were rendered ineffectual. When the duel with Vader commences, it is not a son lashing out in rage, but a master of balance, demonstrating his art. Luke's fighting style is a devastating fusion of light and dark philosophies. Aggressive, yet perfectly controlled. He fights not to kill his father, but to prove a philosophical point, that one could wield the full spectrum of the Force without being enslaved by it. He drives Vader back, not with fury, but with relentless, focused pressure. Every one of Vader's strikes is met with a precise parry and a devastating counter. In complete control of his emotions, Luke channels his passion into his technique. He disarms Vader, not by severing his hand in a fit of rage, but with a calculated maneuver that leaves the Dark Lord helpless. Standing over his defeated father, Luke deactivates his blade. He has won not by surrendering to the dark side, but by proving its inferiority to true balance. He turns to the Emperor, not as a potential apprentice, but as his executioner. The fall of the Emperor marks the end of the war and the beginning of a new philosophical era for the Force. Luke Skywalker, the first student of the Revanite philosophy in millennia, would not rebuild the failed Jedi Order of the past. He would create something new. His new Jedi Order would not be a cloistered monastery of dogmatic ascetics, but an order of pragmatic guardians who understood the necessity of action and the reality of emotion. Trainees, including his sister Leia, would be taught the full nature of the Force, both its creative and destructive aspects. They would learn that balance was not the absence of darkness, but the mastery of it. This new generation of Jedi would be more adaptable and more resilient to the temptations that had destroyed their predecessors. Luke Skywalker, trained by the prodigal knight Revan, did more than win a war. He transformed the philosophical landscape of the galaxy, correcting the fatal ideological flaws of the old Jedi and forging a new path, ensuring that the shadows would never again be able to consume the light unopposed. But that's just one possible timeline. What do you think? How would a galaxy guided by this new philosophy develop? Would a Jedi Order that embraces control over suppression be strong enough to face the next great threat? Let me know your theories in the comments below.